And greetings. Welcome into a Tuesday morning inside of our Pyramid Paving Studios as we reconstitute Joe Thomas in the morning in a visual fashion. Not quite as creepy as perhaps the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but perhaps more information than you ever wanted before. Hmm. Much to do this morning, but first, here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. So, the president, Wisconsin pandering, we're going to get into some of his other common pandering moments as we get into the program because Dean Clancy from Americans for Prosperity is going to join us. We're also going to continue to pimp the first personal appearance ex officio for Joe Thomas in the morning. I'm going to be part of the Thomas Jefferson birthday uh, gala, if you will, at the First Free Coffee Bar in the Hollymead Town Center of Charlottesville. And it's a great new place. They're just apparently got an ABC license too. I don't understand how everyone else can get their licenses. I'm still sitting here waiting for the FCC saying we can have a radio station back. But I guess the public must be allowed to ask their questions. The Senate race is heating up. The deadline for uh, signatures has finally come and gone, and so we know who the GOP candidates are. A lot of them didn't make the muster for there. We'll get into that. The Common Grounds budget, which perhaps wasn't that the name of the coffee shop and friends? Email Joe at JT in the morning radio at gmail.com. I see 17 years. You can't just toss it out like that. I mean, theoretically. Or you can call 434-882-4217, as the number says right over here. And leave, but understand it's not a live interaction. We're still working on the tech to get the live phone calls so we can actually have conversations. But it is there, and you can just leave me a comment, a question, answer. Maybe was Common Grounds the coffee shop in Friends? Did you ever watch Friends? Could you care less about that? But the governor has his new Common Grounds budget, and I've said this before. It's actually a chapter in my unauthorized autobiography that I'm writing. That the the phrase, and you've heard me say this before, if compromise is so damn good, why does it have victims? And we all are, because the governor said, but it doesn't raise taxes. See, that's where the American progressive is so victorious, because they come in and they say, we're going to raise all your taxes. We're going to raise all your taxes. We're going to raise them, and raise them some more. And then conservatives say, well, how about we just not raise their taxes, but just take everything we were, and we're supposed to say, whew, boy, we dodged a bullet on that one. Also, the Albemarle County School Board has again canceled another historic figure from their own past. Agner Hurt is now just Agner Elementary School. We'll get into that. The Vogons have finally taken the buck squad on. Apparently, Charlottesville City Council not as enthusiastic about gun control as they say, because they cut the Buck Squad's requested funding by more than half in their latest budget proposal. Mm. Yes. The president, President 45, and his statements on states' rights. And I said that in the preview to this broadcast because it's important to understand that President Trump's right about states' rights. It's just not common, and most of us can't remember a time when states' rights and the presidency wasn't there just to simply be. But discuss again 434 882 4217, or you can make your emails to the address above as well. The idea that we have this elected monarch, this president that with a pen and a phone will then get to determine whatever you want. So you create this every 4 year blood sport that is the presidential race, because we want a president that's going to do our things. And the states and the individual places you live are supposed to be able to represent you more directly because they're closer to you. As I've said in the past, some of these guys like Sean Hannity, etc., are humorous to me. And I actually said this to Sean's producer, Sweet Baby James. We were on a panel at the talk radio industry summit called Talkers Magazine. And we were on a panel together, and we were talking about how Sean's got it a lot easier than I do. And he laughed. He said, how do you figure that?" I said, "Well, his bills are probably easier to pay," and that got a chuckle from the gathering crowd. But I said, the odds of Sean running into Chuck Schumer in the grocery store are pretty slim, aren't they? He said, "Yeah, I see your point." I said, "To me, I go talk about the Albemarle County School Board, and I might run into one of the school board members or one of the board of supervisors at the grocery store." So it's harder to be harsher. If you were following the week that was the week in between the last radio broadcast and the first one of these, the Commonwealth's attorney for Charlottesville City, Joe Platania, opened a comment on one of my Facebook posts about it. And I was trying to post every day, at least in lieu of a radio show. And Joe Platania wrote, he said, "I'm going to probably get in trouble for this, but I used to listen to Joe all the time." Now, being the Commonwealth's attorney elected to that constitutional office in the city of Charlottesville, I'll bet you can guess pretty well what political party he's in. But that's the thing, is we're not out here saying Republican good, Democrat bad. I'd love a day when everyone's just judged on the content of their character. That's a familiar phrase. Have you heard it before? Not the color of the yard sign in their yard, because we keep going through this process, and President Trump is getting a lot of flack over his comments regarding a nationwide royal presidency ban on abortion. And conservatives are all up in arms saying, "We want a president that's going to make this illegal, and we'll send you to the Tower of London." But that's not how we're constructed. And be careful what you wish for, because when people like of the political ideology of a Barack Obama or whoever is telling President Biden what to do get into office, that's going to go the other way. And if you give the authority to the executive branch through all of their minions, and we've chronicled this before. If you're a familiar user of the radio program, you've heard it, but if not, your first time saying, "What's this old looking guy? He looks like Glenn Beck's little brother." So the issue with the royal presidency is all these cabinet offices, certainly Department of Justice most famously, but EPA, FCC, IRS, all of these executive branch offices beholden only to the president, working at the pleasure of the president. They have police departments and they have court systems, extracurricular to the Article 3 provisions. And so they can haul you into court. Oh, they're administrative courts, but they can levy fines. They can't close your business. Look at how they used this premise during the COVID-19 lockdowns that Tony Fauci admitted just a few weeks ago that were made up out of complete crap. I understand I can use the bovine excrement word, but I want to stay in practice, because we will be broadcasted over a transmitter again very soon. So all of that is on our docket for this morning. I mentioned Dean Clancy from Americans for Prosperity coming up. We'll also talk with Steve Harvey, First Free Coffee Bar, about the Thomas Jefferson birthday coming up on April 13th. And it's funny because all of a sudden, oh, Thomas Jefferson loved the skies over and loved celestial. He was very into studying the stars, and he would have loved the solar eclipse. Anyway, Thomas Jefferson saw a few solar eclipses. He lived 80 plus years. He saw a few solar eclipses. He didn't. We don't need to go back in time and bring Thomas Jefferson to 2024 in order for him to experience a solar eclipse. And if you go to my Facebook page, Seville Joe Thomas is our Facebook handle, you will find a video I shot at the, what are they, critical mass, what is it, the impactful slope, whatever it was, the moment that, according to my pinhole camera, my wife made a couple of plates with pinholes in one, and then you could watch the trajectory of the moon across the solar face, and I was watching and watching and watching, and then as the sun disappeared in my little reflective viewer, I went out and got my cell phone out and shot a little video in my backyard, to my wife's chagrin, saying, "Oh, couldn't you've cleaned it up a little bit first? My gosh." It wasn't really all that dark, was it? I mean, and I remember the first solar eclipse I was aware of as a kid, and I was struck by the fact that I felt the same way then as some 6 or 7-year-old. Oh, it's the eclipse, and we made the box thing. We showed the video yesterday, the box, and we got the little pinhole, just like my wife did yesterday. We did all this stuff, and afterwards I'm like, okay, that was it. Then of course there was the 2.1 magnitude earthquake in Glen Allen this morning, or I guess late last night. So about 10:45 last night, there was a 2.1 magnitude earthquake in Glen Allen. Now, yes, certainly anyone who follows California or even New Jersey says, well, 2.1 isn't nearly as big as the earthquake they got in New Jersey, Joe. And notice how we Americans quickly forget the really big earthquakes that happen in the world. When one happens in New Jersey, are all the toxic waste plants okay? Are they secure? But now there's a 2.1 magnitude earthquake in Glen Allen, and I'm starting to look around, email, Jack Maxwell down in Scottsville and say, hey, anyone seen any locusts? Any 4 guys on horseback riding around central Virginia? Because it's how many more of these things? But actually, it's okay. It's okay from what I understand. Everything in Glen Allen is just fine. They said they felt it as far away as Chesterfield. But again, we hear these things. Earthquake? There was an earthquake in Virginia? And I guarantee you somebody will email me a question about all of that. But anyway, we'll get some folks have already been calling in at 434-882-4217, and you can as well. And the number is right up there, and you can just leave your comments or questions as a voicemail, and we'll address all of them. Again, we're going to get into the common ground budget proposal from the governor, though, when we come back as well on Joe Thomas in the Morning.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
An astronomical day at Indy. That story next.
Learn more at She Can STEM.
The home of the greatest spectacle in racing played host to the greatest spectacle in astronomy Monday. More than 50,000 people showed up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, put on eclipse spectacles, and watched the total eclipse. The day included educational programs, exhibits, and demonstrations, and every visitor was given a pair of the greatest spectacles, see what they did there, to watch the eclipse. There was also an autograph session with IndyCar drivers and a presentation by the Sons of Purdue graduate Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. Speedway says 75% of the eclipse watchers had never been to the Speedway for a race. The entire time of totality lasted less than 6 laps of the Indy 500.
Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid-70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joe Thomas in the morning, and thank you for letting us be of service to you. However you do it, my wife watches on YouTube so she can see all the numbers, and she was like, "Oh, when you came back on yesterday, we had a bollocks yesterday with YouTube. Just about this time yesterday morning, the internet line burped for, I don't know, a minute, whatever. The ISP said, "Hey, we got to reset." You know, there was some Homer Simpson guy in a room with donuts and went on a button somewhere and reset everybody's routers. And so we broke connection with the YouTube head end, and I guess YouTube is pretty brutal about this stuff. So YouTube said, "Well, they must be done," and I didn't know that. So you live, you learn. Hopefully we stay on for all 2 hours this morning through the 8 o'clock hour. If you go back into the YouTube channel, you can watch. We talked to Congressman Good. We also talked to Nancy Koenig from the Convention of States Project, and a lot of folks more and more interested about the Convention of States and what it means and how it's being applied. And there's a couple of points of order, and they're not all perfect. There were a couple of attempts at Convention of States from the southern states and the northern states, but a lot of them were trying to fix the issue of slavery from the states up, and that's where we were talking about the president and his statements regarding vis-a-vis abortion as well. Is about federalism and the royal presidency, this elected monarch that we've grown accustomed to. We really have, and it's metastasized over some years. But back here on the state level, we had a couple of things going on, including the governor's new proposed budget, and we got that here for you this morning. Here's the governor and his statement on the budget.
To present today. It is complicated and big. As I said, there's over 200 amendments. I want to be clear, there are no vetoes. This is a package of amendments.
So the folks are concerned. All the Democrats are out there saying, "Oh my goodness, the governor's gutted our budget proposal, and he's throwing all the teachers from the bus." Notice how it's always the teachers and their budget proposal. But the numbers, the bottom line is still the same. He's just rearranged some of the deck chairs on the Titanic. $21.2 billion in education, the governor said. And he said, we don't need to raise taxes to do it. And here's one of the things that I think the left is most concerned about regarding especially the budgeting in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is that over the past couple of years, the governor has held a master class in many things, and there are a lot of my ardently conservative friends who are like, yeah, but these are the same folks who, we allowed the General Assembly to remain in the control of the governor's opposition party, and even in less prickly times as this, that's not an easy thing to get passed. But this one, I mean, as I said, the fentanyl bill was amazing to me because not only was it proposed by a Republican member of the General Assembly, it was passed, and then of course the governor signs it to punish the manufacturers of fentanyl with a greater degree. And I was talking to an email from Jan, who emailed after yesterday's program and our portion about the governor signing this fentanyl bill. And Jan had a great point to me. She said, here's the thing, Joe. It's one thing for a dealer of fentanyl to face a life sentence if one of his customers dies from poisoning from fentanyl. And she thanked us for referring to it as fentanyl poisoning. It's not an overdose. It's just any dose is a fatal amount of fentanyl. But the manufacturer knows there is intentionality in the fact that if a manufacturer of a pill knows they've put fentanyl in it, the street dealer, I guess you could make the legal defense that they might not know that the phony OxyContin pill has got fentanyl in it or not. But the brother that made it, he knows. So it's a fair point to that. But the governor, for all of the ups and downs and the backs and forths amongst conservatives and liberals, and is he a secretary of whatever, secretary of commerce candidate if President Trump wins or anything like that, one of the things he has done is again given us the provable point that if you cut taxes, you don't need to replace them. And this is something the progressives love to say. Every time a conservative says we're going to cut taxes, the progressives immediately, because there's a point A to point B argument to be made that says, well, if you cut these taxes out, where's the money going to come from? But the last couple of years, revenues, I hate that phrase, collections at the Richmond level, at the General Assembly level, have gone up. And therefore, cutting taxes, again, provably, actually increases the collections for the state government. Another local story that, again, is not so much about Virginia, but it is something that Virginia has been grappling with. Wyoming has purged 25% of the names from their voter rolls. I know some of you are saying, are those the folks that voted for Liz Cheney? No, but Wyoming's Secretary of State has finished a cleanup of their voter rolls. And here's how they did it. And tell me if this sounds like vote suppression to you. So, if you had participated in the 2022 election and voted, casted a vote, regardless of who it was, you're fine. But if you're on the voter rolls and did not participate in the 2022 election, you will get a letter from whatever member of the Cheney family it is. That's, it's a small state. The population is not all that high in Wyoming, so you got to imagine there's some more Cheney family members somewhere to pop up and be part of the staff at the University of Virginia. You know what I'm saying? But what they did was they said, we will send a letter to everyone. And you get these all the time. You get these from software apps. Your cell phone will send you a note once a week, if yours is anything like mine, saying, hey, you know that you haven't used whatever, the Free Cell app in a month. Do you want to delete it and free up some space? And that's basically what the Wyoming Board of Elections is doing, is they send out a letter. But if you suggest such a thing, and this is where you have to have courage, because the media, the press, they're going to know that it's going to be considered, because it's always about some guy you don't know, some person who was taken off the voter rolls. And the implications from the American progressive are always the same. You're a dumbass. So they will say, and they are saying, the Democrats of Wyoming are saying that, well, not everyone, they get the mail, and maybe they have a different address now. Perhaps they don't even know the language, and, they're not even You see, if you push them far enough, they will talk themselves into the corner of their argument, and then you can finally prove the point that they're not for what they say they're for. But they're all screaming about vote suppression, and all these people who have been purged, now they've lost their right to vote. Well, they haven't, and this is my industry. So if you've been taken off of a voter registration roll, has your right to vote been taken away? 434-882-4217, or the email address that just vanished from the screen, JTinthemorningradio@gmail.com. Is having been taken off of a voter registry really the same thing as losing your right to vote? I'm pretty sure you're going to say no, it isn't. But that's what the hair on fire leftists will say is, and they're saying this in Wyoming. And I say this because we continue to talk about doing this in Virginia. The governor, again, standing up against this ERIC software, which we found out was actually being used by the Zuckerbucks people to go out and drag people to the polls, find the unregistered but eligible voters and go and drag them out of wherever they are and insert them into the voter rolls and get them registered to vote. It's crazy making to really think about some of the scenarios, but that's what they were doing there. And it's mind-numbing to see this. But if you have the courage, to do it, you can do it and stand up and say, we're going to, and now, like the governor here in Virginia gave us a provable point. This isn't theory. This isn't the McIntyre School of Business or even the Larry Sabato Institute for getting Larry mentioned on the morning news. This is a provable point that you can do this without having people thrown off the voter rolls. You send them a letter saying, hey, we notice you didn't vote in 2022. Are you still a resident of this address? Click here, send this back, and we know that you're now okay to stay on the voter rolls. That's all it is. It's just an acceptance of the fact that, hey, we noticed you didn't play along last year. Dean Clancy from the Americans for Prosperity coming up next on Joe Thomas in the Morning. Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joining us now from Americans for Prosperity, he is the great Dean Clancy. Welcome back, Dean. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, thanks. Always a
Terrific,
pleasure.
terrific piece that you penned in the Hill on the president and his attempts to sell the idea that, yeah, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. It's amazing how they just managed to keep going along in that same campaign. Why does it seem, and I say seem, to work on folks in the margins electorally? Is it because there aren't as many of us seeing how hard it is to pay a medical bill these days, that they really just don't understand how much his policies and the policies over the last 20 years have really driven up healthcare costs?
Well, that's exactly right. Healthcare costs are at an all-time high. Health insurance premiums have more than doubled since the enactment of the so-called Affordable Care Act in 2010. And it does seem sometimes like voters don't make connections. Now, at Americans for Prosperity, we do a lot of polling, and what we've discovered is the high cost of healthcare is a very high issue of concern. It's right behind inflation and jobs
Hmm.
on people's list of concerns. Um, but does that mean that they're going to vote against President Biden or the Democrats or something because of that issue? We also find that voters tend to trust Democrats on healthcare more than Republicans. And President Biden is running on healthcare. He's treating
Yeah.
it as a strength. Of course, he does that with every issue. He's got very few accomplishments that he can boast about, but he just tries to say it's great. Bidenomics, it's working. It's great. Immigration, everything's fine.
Yep. Border's
Um,
perfect. Exactly. Well,
the
and
border's perfect.
I've had friends tell me that that might be true. This is exactly, it's not as they say in the gaming world, not a flaw, but a feature, and designed to make
Sure.
people. When you look at what a deductible from your pay check is each and every month, I know more and more of the younger people that I talk to say that they're looking at things like direct primary care associations and things like that, with health savings accounts, saying, at $400 a month, if I took that and put it into health savings account, I'd be doing okay. Are people catching on to that?
Well, people are certainly catching on to the fact that the cost of health insurance is taking a bigger and bigger chunk out of their paycheck every week. And they also can see that when they do need health care, they have to fork out a lot out of pocket before their insurance
Hmm.
kicks in. That's the health insurance deductible. Those have gone up by 60% on average since Obamacare was enacted. And for many people, they've tripled. It's not unusual now to have a deductible of $5,000, even $10,000. It's almost like you don't have health insurance because that's money you have to pay
Hmm.
before your insurance kicks in. And now, luckily, most of us are healthy most of the time, so we don't experience this financial pain on a regular basis. But people with chronic medical conditions, people who have to see the doctor a lot, they do experience it and they are very concerned. And as I said in our polling, it's clear the voters are concerned about the high and rising cost of health care. And you mentioned direct primary care. This is a wonderful new approach where you kind of cut out the insurance middleman and you
Hmm.
just pay doctors directly to have access to them. It can be quite affordable. It's a monthly subscription, a little bit like a Netflix subscription to your favorite doctors, and patients and doctors love it
Hmm.
because they don't spend time on insurance or being told no. The doctor's just there to help you. I ask people, does your primary care doctor give you his personal cell phone number so you can ask him a question at any time? And they look at me blankly. But with direct primary care doctors, they always do, or they love to, because they're working for you. It's better health care, and it is a way forward. And at AFP, we've been trying to encourage um, direct primary care and remove government barriers so that everybody can have access.
Well, and I think one of the things that is a problem for the American left when it comes to the narrative is when people go to these direct primary care associations and just one little snippet of their experiences are the costs of prescription drugs.
Right.
And the president's case that he's going to, and he said it again in the State of the Union address, is that somehow bring down the costs of these prescriptions. is actually happening if you're in these direct primary care associations. How is that, and how do they get to continue to say they're going to invoke these price controls when obviously the marketplace does a better job of it?
Oh, absolutely. A few things to think about here. First of all, yes, President Biden is really running on this alleged accomplishment of having imposed government price controls on prescription drugs in the Medicare program. That price control policy is being implemented as we speak. All the best economists, including those who are left of center, agree it's going to lead to fewer new cures in the future. It's going to stifle innovation. It's probably going to cause shortages of drugs. And now President Biden wants to double down on it and impose it on the private sector as well, outside of Medicare. And that would just magnify the negative effects of the price controls. Now, there is political pressure to do something about prescription drug prices because that's something that almost all patients see up front. It's often something they have to, pay out of pocket for a share of the cost. And prescription drugs are only about 10% of all health expenditures, but they're the part that most people see most often. So there is political pressure to do something. We think that instead of government price controls, what you need is more competition. We need to make it so these drug companies can't just game the system and prolong their patents. Patents are basically monopolies that enable them to charge high prices. They should be able to recoup their investment costs, but they shouldn't have a monopoly forever. And we should also put more money in the hands of patients and have more of healthcare done through direct payment rather than through third parties like insurance companies. And again, a direct primary care, it's amazing. You can get generic drugs, non-branded drugs for like a 95% discount through your direct primary care doctor. Why? Because he buys directly from the drug makers, cuts out all the middlemen. And, when you use insurance to pay for a thing, it often costs a lot more than if you just paid for it directly out of pocket. And people are waking up to that. And in fact, Mark Cuban, the entrepreneur, has actually created a business on this. He sells you generic drugs direct from the manufacturer with only a tiny little dispensing fee and markup to cover his overhead. And so you get great discounts through that as well. You can just go online and buy drugs. This is the future of healthcare, direct payment. And it's very exciting, but it's very different from what President Biden is peddling.
Dean Clancy is on with us from Americans for Prosperity and their Paragon Health Institute public advisor. Dean, you mentioned how actually being customer to provider economies drive the prices down because the manufacturer has to actually go to somebody and say, here's what it costs. It's always seemed like that's been such an abstract to try to teach people away from the McIntyre schools of commerce here at the University of Virginia. But if this is it, living out loud in front of everyone, is that a concern? And maybe that's why you see President Biden pushing harder and harder to kind of get to an end game where of this track I think we've been on since Obamacare to just get to single payer.
Well, it's absolutely true that President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders and many Democrats and progressives really do want to end up at a government-run healthcare system. They want to get rid of the private health insurance companies, and I'm no fan of some of the things the insurers do, but they're victims of bad government policy. We're all victims in this thing. And but the problem is, we know from world experience that a single government-run system, single payer, doesn't work. It basically, you end up standing in line waiting for health care, or you end up having to get health care under the table, sort of a black market, or you have to go overseas. There's a flare-up in Canada right now. The health minister there chastised voters because 46% of them in a recent poll said, yes, they would voluntarily travel to the United States to obtain health care that's supposedly free for them in Canada, but they can't get it because they're waiting in line. And you know, it's like the minister is thinking to himself, I need to get myself a new electorate. You know, these people
Right.
don't understand what a good thing I'm doing for them here, controlling their healthcare. Anyway, um, that's the wrong way to go. Markets work in healthcare if you let them. They work. What people need to learn is that what you see in gasoline and the
Hmm.
grocery store and when you go onto Amazon, same thing can work in healthcare. The problem in healthcare, there's no price transparency. In fact, healthcare is the one industry in America where you do not routinely see the price of a thing before you have to pay for it. And that would change if patients were controlling more of the dollars.
Well,
If you
sure.
had a tax-free health savings account and money in that account, and you're deciding which doctor, which service, which drug you're going to purchase, obviously with a doctor's advice, um, you'll start asking, well, how much does this cost? Is there a more affordable alternative? And
Hmm.
when that happens, that's when competition and price transparency kick in naturally. And then you get prices going down, quality going up, just like in any other market.
Dean, what about the what I'm told is a growing shortage of doctors and nurses? I was told during the days of Obamacare, when that was ramping up, that, oh no, Obamacare is going to bring in all this army of new doctors and nurses, and we're going to have all sorts of availabilities for healthcare. Yet now here we are, all these years later, hearing about how we can't keep doctors, the doctors we have are overworked, the nurses we have are overworked. How do you, obviously, I think that the marketplace would address that as well. I mean, gosh, when I was a kid, which, as you can tell by the white beard, wasn't yesterday, uh, you know, our family physician was 2 blocks away in our neighborhood, and he worked out of his garage, literally. I mean, he had his medical office. He had converted his garage into a medical office, and that's where he saw patients. And it was lovely. It was fine. Nobody felt ill about it. It wasn't like black
Right.
market, but we seem to be discouraging doctors rather than encouraging them.
Yeah, this is a big problem. They call it physician burnout. Some people call it moral injury. Doctors are retiring early at an
Hmm.
alarming rate. Um, by the way, physicians have the highest suicide rate of any major profession.
Hmm.
Some of them are finding hope and a better life through the direct payment model that I talked about. They cut out the insurers and suddenly they're able to care for patients, which is why they got into medicine.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so I actually heard one doctor say, DPC brings joy back into the practice of medicine. And so there's some hope there, but it is a problem. And, Obamacare, yeah, everything was going to be great. Well, what happened was they imposed all these expensive mandates that just drove up the cost of health insurance and health care, but they didn't increase the supply of doctors or hospitals.
Hmm.
So yes, you do see shortages. They're regional. Some places in the country are better off than others, but in some places, especially, of course, remote and rural areas, it's hard to find a doctor. And here's the killer. Obamacare has incentivized the insurers to shrink their networks of doctors and hospitals. So even if you've got a health plan and it might be really cheap because the taxpayers are paying most of the bill for you, you still can't find a doctor that's convenient or timely. You got to drive 20 miles or 50 miles because the doctors near you are not in the health plan's network. That's network shrinkage, they call that. And it's a growing and serious problem. And we're not going to make it better by just doubling down on the stuff we're currently doing.
What about, I want to go back in history a little bit to the build up to Obamacare, because it seemed like the health insurance industry was very, very keen to have the Affordable Care Act passed. And yet they seem to go out of their way to complain about it. But I wonder if this is just, hey, you got what you wanted. Now at least make it look like we're punishing you in the after effect. Is there some of that? Am I reading the tea leaves correctly?
You're reading them absolutely correctly. I followed this pretty closely. Look, healthcare was not great. It wasn't perfect before Obamacare, but Obamacare has made it so much worse. And the health insurance industry has a lot to answer for. They're the ones that kind of made it possible, and they were eager to do it because they knew that if the government forced everybody to buy their product. They, yes, they'd have to accept some regulation. They, in effect, have become government regulated utilities, but they could still make a lot of money. And in fact, I call the Affordable Care Act the Health Insurance Industry Enrichment Act. I mean, honestly, I wish I had bought health stocks before the bill, because they have made out like bandits. The taxpayers are transferring something like $200 billion a year with a B to the health insurers
Wow.
for things like Obamacare and the Medicaid managed care plans. And that's money that just goes straight to them. And then, we hope, of course, that some health care trickles down to the patients. But the insurers, of course, shrink their networks. They deny care. They've got a number of games they play. I'm not saying that they're bad or that having a health insurance industry is bad. We should certainly have it, but it shouldn't be so heavily regulated and so ridiculously lavishly subsidized. And that's why we're trying to move to a system where you, the patient, control your healthcare dollars. You decide what insurance, how much insurance to buy, and what you don't spend on that, you should be able to save in a health savings account that you own and control, that goes with you from job to job, and you can even save and invest that money and build up a nest egg for your future healthcare expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the transformation that we need. We at AFP, we call that a personal option. We need a personal option instead of a government option.
Well, and if you think about it, if you're allowed to keep your health savings account, let's say you start when you're 25, just like a 401k or an IRA, by the time you need the most health care when you're older, you've built this plan up where you can actually afford it. And if you're healthy and you've lived well, maybe you can even pay for your grandkids, first well baby visit or something like that.
Absolutely.
Well, talk about the middlemen in this, because that's really one of the places where you talk about transparency of healthcare costs, the expensive, especially in pharmaceuticals, these sales reps, if you will, when they are some of the biggest cost drivers, aren't they, Dean?
Well, it's true that, for example, prescription drug companies and medical device manufacturers employ armies of salespeople that they send around to talk to doctors and hospitals and try to pitch them on their product versus the competitors. In principle, that's not a bad thing. It's good because the doctors are busy. They don't have time to keep up on all the journal articles about the latest innovations and improvements, and so these sales reps do provide a service in basically bringing that information to them, but they also obviously influence them. And it's, I've noticed this. They often will hire like really attractive women. They look like cheerleaders, coming in. They've got their case full of studies and so on. And the doctors make time to talk with them. And, but I think ultimately the big problem is the fact that so much of healthcare is being paid by insurance. If the patients are controlling the dollars, I don't think this problem of sort of the drug makers pushing their wares would have a seriously negative effect. Maybe I'm wrong. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think that that aspect of it is more, I think, personally, knowing a few of these folks, it's causation more than a correlation. I mean, it just a correlation instead of a
Correlation. Yeah.
causation, because
Yeah.
it came about because they needed to get in front of these doctors who were making these decisions. The health insurance industry, and I want to go back to their complicity in it, Dean, is concerning in the first place. Back in 2008, because it was my industry, I tried to change the narrative to make sure people understood what we were talking about was not strictly insurance as much as it was assurance. And
Mm-hmm.
comparatively, and you and I may have talked about this over that time period, where this would be like going to State Farm and saying, well, I want a policy that will change, every time I change my oil and I need a new set of tires, I can go get it. And you would see the cost of that insurance assurance for your car skyrocket. The same thing for your house. Well, I need new carpets, so I'm going to file a claim with my house
Right.
homeowners
Right.
assurance policy. Is that one of the things that we think insurance, we hear the word insurance and we think, oh, it's just when I have an injury. But what we're doing is we're asking these companies to pay for every little thing that we should be able to pay for by ourselves.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. People are afraid to ask the price of healthcare because they've become accustomed to always running it through their insurance. And if you ask your doctor, what will this cost? He doesn't know the answer
Hmm.
because it depends on your health insurance plan. What have they agreed to pay? What have we agreed to accept? He doesn't know. You don't know, because there's a different price for every patient, and it's just not a market. So you're right. What you want with insurance is to truly insure against big, unexpected medical expenses. You get hit by a bus,
Hmm.
you're diagnosed with cancer, and you need a serious treatment that's expensive. That makes sense to have insurance. Everybody, I think, should have some form of insurance. If you're really wealthy, you can do it with your own savings, but most of us are not really wealthy. We need an insurance policy. But it doesn't have to have all these bells and whistles that, as you put it, pay for routine oil changes or your routine doctor visit, because that just drives up the cost.
Hmm.
And it makes people feel like, oh, I shouldn't ask the price. And, I mean, if you went into the grocery store and there was no prices on the shelves and they said, sorry, this grocery store is not in your network, or, aisle 10 there, that's prior authorization. You got to ask your grocery insurance company for
That's a great
permission to
point.
have those items. It would be insane. But that's what we do in healthcare. And that's why we need, reforms to just get away from that model.
Is the electorate catching on to a degree where the harder the president and the members of his political party push, but I see Republicans as well, saying, "Oh, no, no, we need," because I think there is that fear of being the guy who's, quote, throwing grandma from the bus. That
Right.
always seems to come out when the issues of health insurance, even if it's Medicare, Medicaid, we see the numbers of people who are being thrown onto this program crossing the southern border. How is that going to pencil out? How are they able to come up with that? But the demagoguery about it still seems to be very effective. Like, oh, I don't want the fear of the unknown, I think, is what I'm getting at, Dean.
Yeah. Well, no, you have the problem of things like Medicare and Medicaid have what I call a high demagoguery coefficient. It's most people don't really know exactly what they cover. They just have this very positive sense about them. The truth is, Medicare, for example, is very skinny coverage. It only
Mhm.
covers about half of your expectable health costs. There's all kinds of out-of-pocket costs associated with it. A lot of people have to buy additional private insurance to supplement Medicare, try to
Mhm.
fill in those gaps, and it's very expensive. And they don't know that off until they get the shock when they retire that, oh, everything isn't free. I've got to pay still all kinds of costs. And in fact, Fidelity does an annual estimate. They say that a 65-year-old couple, when they retire, can expect to pay $350,000 out of pocket over the remainder of their life for
Wow.
all the things Medicare does not cover. So that you mentioned that having an HSA would be real helpful for that couple, because then they'd have the money there to
Mhm.
help pay for
Mhm.
those costs. But the politicians play on the ignorance about the details, and so you're right. They just run an ad saying, candidate X wants to reform Medicare. That means throwing grandma off a cliff. And it's not true, but um, people aren't able to parse those facts. We're all busy, and it's tough to become an expert on these things. Hopefully, the listeners to this program are,
Yep,
um,
that's right.
if they're not already experts, hopefully they'll be a little bit more so.
Well, and they should read your piece in The Hill, and we'll share links to it as well. But if you go to The Hill, look up Dean Clancy. It's a great piece on this. Last one for you, Dean. I remember the 2000 presidential race, not just for its hanging chads, but one of President Bush's suggestions was privatizing things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and that was the biggest deal in the Al Gore campaign, was that he's going to turn these programs over to his Wall Street buddies. And some of this is lost in the history of September 11th. But it's interesting when I think back to that history and how, everyone said George Bush was going to turn over all these programs, these care programs for the elderly and the infirm, to his buddies on Wall Street. It really seems like Barack Obama is the one who did that.
Yeah, very much so. With Obamacare, as we've mentioned, it's if you were a health insurance company, boy, you really made out.
Hmm.
And President Bush, I worked in the Bush White House. I was there, and he did propose personal accounts for Social Security. His proposal was very modest. It would not have harmed Social Security a bit. It would have made it a better benefit for seniors. He was going to only allow it for people, after a certain date. So people who are already on Social Security, nothing would change for them. He really came up with a reasonable proposal, but Democrats demagogued it as throwing
Hmm.
grandma off the cliff. Paul Ryan, by the way, was also a victim of this later when he suggested reasonable reforms of Medicare.
Right.
And Republicans ran away. Republicans got scared. There's an old line that Republicans are afraid that the public won't understand. Democrats are afraid that they will understand. I, uh, I don't mean to be too partisan, because at AFP we're not partisan.
Right.
We support Democrats on some issues and Republicans on others, and of course both sides kind of distrust us because we seem to work across the aisle. But healthcare issues are polarized; they're easily demagogued, and this will happen again in 2024. You're seeing it already, and my hope is that the Republican candidates and reasonable Democrats will say, you know what, we actually need to fix healthcare, and let's fix what's broken. Let's keep what works. So Republicans, you don't need to talk about repealing and replacing Obamacare, although there are some fixes of that program that are definitely needed. And Democrats, maybe stop pushing for single payer and a total government takeover. It's not going to happen. At least I hope it doesn't. On our current course, we're headed there. But hopefully everyone could just agree on reasonable incremental reforms that make healthcare better, that put patients more in charge, the personal option approach.
I liked your comparison to a utility, because I don't think a lot of people make that connection, where in many places there's only one insurance provider and it's regulated. So yeah, it very much is just like Dominion or Appalachian Power, Dean. Uh, the 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 political will to do this could be driven by the economic will of dwindling dollar. Uh, is it better to pull the Band-Aid off now and try to fix the wound, stitch it up, rather than wait for the dollars that they're pouring into the system to run out?
Well, interesting analogy. I would say, if anything, we got too many dollars in the healthcare system, going to the wrong places and buying the wrong
Hmm.
things. And the only way to fix that, as I've been saying, is by empowering patients. But we are headed towards a single payer outcome. It's a creeping government takeover. And every time there's a crisis or an alleged crisis, the public response is to listen with open ears to ideas for more government. It sounds
Hmm.
like a solution. It's very easy to try to blame the private sector. But as I said, the private sector in many ways is the victim of bad government policy here, including the health insurance companies. And but yes, on our current course, we're going to end up in a bad place. But the good news is we can steer the ship. We can do things like just give everybody the option of a health savings account. Let everybody have the option of direct primary
Hmm.
care. And we haven't even mentioned the idea, but why not let people take their existing government healthcare subsidies in the form of a lump sum, a fixed amount of money that they can use to decide what they want to buy and what they want to save for future expenses. All of that's contained in a wonderful bill called the Healthcare Fairness for All Act by Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas. We're strongly supporting that bill. It really does map out a personal option reform for the future. And we're hoping to build support for that. And we're hoping candidates this year will get behind bills like that.
Dean, thank you so much. Americans for Prosperity, their medical care guru there. I appreciate it. Again, please read his piece at The Hill, thehill.com. You have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you this morning and via the internet. And, you know, I can watch you now. It's like somebody mentioned yesterday. It reminded them of the old Romper Room show. Are you being a good doobie this morning? No. I don't mean like go find a dispensary. That was what the Romper Room show used to call all the kids, because you would write in and then the hosts would, and it was one of those moments in broadcasting where it really shook me. I didn't realize that most of these programs, like Howdy Doody and whatnot, all had local hosts. So, like, I not hide the fact that I grew up in New York City, but I saw a different Romper Room host than maybe you did if you grew up in Chicago or Cincinnati or someplace like that, where they had different hosts doing the shows. So I didn't know that. I thought they were set, because by the time I came along, network programming was much more commonplace. But back in the day, as they say. So onward, further and further up. Much to still get into this morning, including the president. The president was in Wisconsin, and I'll explain why he was in Wisconsin, but he was touting his student loan debt forgiveness, his most recent student loan forgiveness program, as he was out there pandering to the college kids of Wisconsin.
How can we be the leading country in the world without the best education system in the world and access to it?
So, Mr. President, are you taking questions, or are you going to get in trouble for this? If you're worried about the best education system, by the time somebody's got to college, I think you're a couple of years late. But access, see, that's the phrase they use. Access to the American authoritarian left means money. Because what they've done is created, and it's just like we were talking about with Dean Clancy just in the segment before, the subsidization that just balloons the costs. And college campuses across America have just been willing to continue, just like medical practitioners in many cases, hospitals, that kind of thing, keep raising the costs. Somebody else is going to pay it. And we're multiple $trillion in debt. And is it just the fact that we don't even care about trying to fix it anymore?
It helps women and minority-owned businesses right here in Wisconsin. That's what this is all about.
So what about a business that's not owned by a woman? Is it going to punish them? Is that your implication, Mr. President?
I think we all in this room share one goal. Give everybody a fair shot. Just a shot. Freedom to chase their dreams.
See, and this is where the left likes to use the word freedom. See, they use it as in conjunction with the word from rather than for. And what they don't tell you in their little speechifications is, in order for you to pursue your dreams, those dreams have to be approved by a government officer. So you have to have the right dreams. But it's not freedom to go and pursue your dreams. It's freedom from the indebtedness that you're going to befall someone in order to learn the skills necessary to pursue those dreams. And that's an important way to look at it, because we all have indebtedness to each other for something or another. I mentioned yesterday Mrs. Rosenberg and her TV studies class in Bayside High School. And I don't know if Mayor Adams was in the same classroom with me. He and what's the Wolf of Wall Street kid's name, amongst the rock band Anthrax, all classmates of mine at Bayside High School. But whether Mayor Adams was there or not, Ms. Rosenberg back in 1980 was telling her classroom that there were things that I was learning even then that I put into play right now here for you on this webcast, and soon to be back on a broadcast as soon as the Federal Communication Commission sees fit. But we got to stay in practice, and I was annoying the hell out of my wife sitting at the dining room table talking like this, and she really said, you have to do this after we spent 2.5 hours on Jerry Miller's normally like half-hour long program. We just went on, but 2.5 hours. It was as long as the movie Wolf of Wall Street, hopefully less violent. There, but if you go to I Heart Seville, I Love the Miller group, they've got it, I think, linked up, and it's on my Facebook page if you go to Seville Joe Thomas on Facebook. But the president, that phrase is exactly what the American left does, is they take what sounds like a conservative prospect, and because of the way they use the word.
I think we all in this room share one goal: give everybody a fair shot. Just a shot. Freedom to chase their dreams.
Freedom to vote for me come November. But they use the phraseology, freedom, we're for freedom. And it bugged me for a long time. I said, well, how can they get away with saying that? And then I realized that they're the number one art that you have to, or skill that you have to develop if you're going to be a member of the American left, is the ability to do things like brush your teeth and comb your hair while averting your eyes, because you're not going to be able to look at yourself in the mirror after this. So you might, in some cases, you might not even be able to see yourself in the mirror. And with some of these folks, I'm pretty sure James Carville is actually a vampire. But that's really Mary Matlin's issue more than it's anyone else's. The president uses this phrase, freedom, and it bugged me for years. How do they get away with saying freedom when they want statism? And it's because they are pitching freedom from paying for it, freedom from being unhoused. That's another one of these phrases. If they're unhoused, who the hell's job was it to house them? Theirs. They certainly can't do it for themselves. Have you met these folks? We were talking about this in abstract to the Hershey factory and the Northrop Grumman factory and the Amazon fulfillment center, all coming to Central Virginia to employ tens of thousands of people. Why do they have to move from without? Why can't they be trained from within? And that's where you push that button. You push that button, and the American leftist admits they don't think you can. They would probably, in some cases, prefer you not to, because if you can, then you realize, oh, I could have done this without you. And then we've added another conservative to the voting roll. So why Wisconsin? Was Wisconsin notably ethnically diverse? Well, I mean, it depends on the color of the cheese, but I think the Wisconsin's key is its electoral map placement. And we have the screen. Can we show the screen that of 23, not 23andMe? It is 270 to win. And you're getting the screen for me here. All right. So this is the map currently at 270 to win. And 270 to win is just a neat website. It just shows you, and you can play with. And you can see right now all the states that are still, quote, swing states. And look, right there, Wisconsin. Oh, boy. So they also do something which is kind of neat, is that they will, like Real Clear Politics, they will aggregate some of the polls so that you can play with this map. This is interactive, so I can change this. So, for example, they say Pennsylvania is too close to call. Well, they have Joe Biden up by 1.8%. So we're going to say it's kind of a little blue. But then Wisconsin is a little bit Trump. He's up by 0.7%. So you look, see right now, 245 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 245 for Donald Trump. Then what about Michigan right here? Certainly Michigan is blue. No, currently polling averages say Donald Trump is up 1.2 percentage points there, and you can change the colors depending on how red or blue you think they might be. In Georgia down here, see now we're at 260 electoral votes. So you have Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. Certainly Arizona must be a liberal bastion. Look at all their liberal senators. Oh, silly you. President Trump leads there by 4 points. So now we're up to, what is that you see? 271 electoral votes. And that's not, and they say, oh, the nationwide polls, President Biden's leading by 0.3 percentage point. That doesn't matter. When was the last time the same person won the electoral vote and the electoral college vote? Let's go back to our map here, since we still had a couple of states in play. In Georgia, President Trump leads by 3.7%. And in Nevada, President Trump leads by 3.5%. What do you see there, boys and girls? 293 electoral votes. And, some of these other states, Pennsylvania, as I said, Pennsylvania's 1.8%. There was a point about 6 months ago where President Trump was leading just by a little tiny bit in Pennsylvania. What about New Mexico? What about New Mexico? When do they do they fall prey to these border crossings as well? So you can see as you listen to the president out there in Wisconsin, there's a very, very electoral reason he is in Wisconsin announcing his student loan forgiveness program, because he wants you to have freedom from having to pay for anything, freedom to chase the dreams that the government has approved.
Fair shot, just a shot. Freedom to chase their dreams.
As long as we approve them, file the forms in triplicate, go to chaseyourdreams.gov. I don't know, there may actually be a website called chaseyourdreams.gov. I have no idea, but that's what it comes down to. Classically, the Paul Krugman statement regarding the Obamacare, the death panels, where he said, oh, death panels don't exist. Certainly we have advisability of care panels, and they will determine, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's famous. I've got the audio clip somewhere. Oh, gosh, is that still at the old shop? Oh, boy. I better see. This is why it's nice to have low friends in high places. Sometimes I may have to get that audio clip, because they've scrubbed that video from the internet. You cannot find that video from ABC this week, where Paul Krugman admits that there are advisability of care panels in the Affordable Care Act that would, of course, determine whether some expensive or unnecessary treatment might have to be denied. And if that leads you to your death, we didn't call it a death panel, but you have freedom from something or another. Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joe Thomas in the morning, and we are here for our sports segment. We opened the notebook for the great one himself. He is Mac McDonald. Good morning, Mac. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm doing fine late night, but that's going to happen a couple of times a year. You got like All-Star Game, World Series, you're going to have your late nights. That's
Yep,
okay.
true.
As I ranted about yesterday, I still don't understand why the women's game was played at 3 o'clock Sunday, but at least I got sleep Sunday night. But anyway, yeah, watched the onslaught last night in the second half and stayed up. So anyway, it's all good.
So take us into the NCAA final, and what did we learn? And I thought the ACC was such a down league, yet there we are in the tournament, all the way into the Final Four. Was the demise? I know we weren't there in Purdue and UConn, but at the end of the day, I think the ACC with five of the Sweet 16, and I think four of the eight. I mean, that was a pretty good showing for a league that everyone said was done.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think also what Dan Hurley was talking about in the post game is that they have a championship culture. We know that. But one of the things that he was able to do is set the tone for coaches. And it's different in college football than basketball, but they can still recruit heavily at the high school ranks and then sprinkle in a couple of transfers.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you can keep a very powerful roster. And I think that's really, kind of the message because, Hurley had a message to his team. He said, we're going to play to our identity. And their identity was they were going to guard the perimeter, which they did. Purdue got 1-3. That was in the first half. They were only 1 of 7.
Gee.
And but when you think of the way UConn destroyed teams, so their average scoring margin in this year was 23 points. Oh, by the way, last year it was 20 points a game. So they have won 12 straight NCAA tournament games by double digits.
My gosh.
Okay. And so what it says is that, you coach to your identity, you coach to your culture, and and especially in basketball, but you can build a basketball roster easier than a football roster with the transfer portal, which still, remains, part of it. When you look at what their guard, you got to have good guards, you got to have a good big man. There's just a lot of little things. But last night, the Purdue guards were no match for what UConn was doing.
So the end of it all, and obviously the TV ratings haven't been seen yet, but we talk about how all this money is going in, and the possibilities of folks like Caitlin Clark and the name, image, likeness money. Were there enough eyeballs to see the ads for the cars and the getaway vacations and everything else during the NCAA tournament to continue to generate that kind of revenue?
Yeah, and I think, of course, CBS is doing a lot of different things by, TNT and True TV. And early in the tournament, we don't know which game is where. We can't find it. But I think when you read the headline that the 2019 or the women's title game Sunday, even though at 3 o'clock on Sunday was the highest rated game in 5 years. 2019 was the last time that the women's game had. But, it was generational. It was Dawn Staley and what she was going to do, and also Caitlin Clark, which we talked about yesterday. So I assume that the ratings, because of the big men, because of Zach Edey, and Edey accomplished something only one other player. He's going to win his second Wooden Award. There's only one other player who's done that. And by the way, he has a restaurant in Charlottesville, and so he. But what you had was you had some star power with what UConn was doing, and then the way they were, the way they were playing. So Purdue, by getting there, and it's been a long time since they've, won a title or done any of that. But that, it does make a big difference on the way you position things or whatever. I mean, I thought the production last night was excellent. I mean, but the pregame show was a total hour, always way too many talking heads, but you had to put Bobby Hurley on the dais with Charles Barkley and Clark Kellogg. They even had to bring Clark Kellogg off the radio broadcast to make sure he fills in at halftime. Do you really need 7 talking heads? I mean, that's a discussion. And if you've got but I think from a TV standpoint, just media coverage, and I think the NCAA gets it right. I think they know what they've got, and as far as the product is concerned, and there will always be when you're looking at game times, that's still but we're on the East Coast. The people on the West Coast don't mind a game starting at 9:30 at night, which last night's game did.
Right.
So or it was 9:25 or whatever it was. But I think for the most part, yes, it's still madness. It still is in position prior to the Masters. What else is going on until until the 1st of April? So I think the NCAA gets it right for the most part.
Well, so then prognosticate what comes. I mean, if somebody had said, "Oh, Purdue is going to be playing UConn for the NCAA championship," if you were to think at all about it, if you went back 10 years and said that, you'd say, "What, for the women's title?" Because of Gino and everything else. But, what does this do to the landscape of a school? Let's say that you have a school in Harrisonburg or Charlottesville that it struggles to get anywhere. Or Blacksburg, and you can make a change, and I still see these schools, and this is something Hurley has done because of his Duke roots, is to build a foundation of 4 and 5 years around maybe a name, image, likeness, transfer portal kind of person like that. Is that going to be the formula going forward? Is mostly 4 and 5 years with a couple of splashy transfer portals?
Yeah, because the climate has changed in that regard for sure, and that's why Calipari got he got ripped at Kentucky because he was still doing the one and dones thing. Duke is still they feel that they're just not going to get that many, transfers. I think Tony Bennett is going almost 50-50, bring in a couple of transfers. I'm still going to bring in young guys, the way you build it. And there are philosophies out there on the way. But I think a lot of teams now will look at what Danny Hurley is doing at UConn. And granted, it's their 6th title. They've done this before. And you ask any admission person, any college president, applications go up. It did at Virginia in 2019. Applications go up when you win big events, the football championship, the basketball championship, applications have a real tendency, your athletic department can showcase a lot of stuff. Look at UVA lacrosse, the power, just the power that UVA has shown in an Ivy League sport, right, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But I mean, UVA's been dominant for years and years and years in lacrosse, and there's no doubt that probably positions a lot of kids from the Northeast to apply and to come to UVA. So there's a lot of things that go into that, but I think schools are not, they don't care too much as long as if you're an athletic director. What I'm trying to say is, if you're an AD and everything's under budget, then we're good. We're okay. But why are we jumping conferences? Well, it gets into, that's a conversation for another day. That gets into TV contracts. It gets into TV money. And the biggest problem with the ACC is the contract is labeled earmarked 2036, and that still bothers a lot of people. So.
Well, you talk about jumping conferences, and I still chuckle, being sort of, the middle of what everyone thought was an April Fool's Day joke. But this whole thing about FSU and the Big Ten, you said to us at the moment it was an April Fool's Day gag. But yet I still see stories propagating about this.
Sure. Well. Yeah, because now everybody's trying to predict what's going to happen if Clemson and Florida State win their respective cases. And then it's going to be, because you had your Magnificent Seven, which does include Virginia and Virginia Tech. And so now this will open, Joe, the floodgates of what's going to happen to the ACC. People did react to that story, even though it was tongue in cheek. And they were saying, well, this is going to cost the ACC a league, and it's going to fold, and so on and so forth. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. Maybe when you and I are on a porch having a lemonade and trying to put our teeth back in our head. But I think that it's going to be a way of life for a while. Yes. Do we need to circle wagons and put some restrictions on nil money? That's really the big problem now, is that and in talking to Bud every week, and this weekend I'm going to be at the Virginia Tech spring game. I'm going to be talking to the Whit Babcocks of the world. I'm going to be talking to the Brent Pryes of the world. The big thing now is, all right, we've got to get to where the big boys are as far as nil. Your Alabamas, your Florida States, those schools are so heavily endowed nil-wise, and that's why Wally Walker is on the grounds at UVA. His job is to recruit, get the big businesses involved, so it's really become just like the NBA or Major League Baseball, whatever. You go after your major corporate sponsors now, because the people that have been supporting your athletic program for a long time, $2,000 here, $10,000 here, $5,000. Okay, I'll pay, whatever to sit courtside, the John Grishams of the world. But still, you need major corporate dollars to support nil, or the students are either going to transfer or they, because it's an inducement right now to some of the great players who are being looked at. Hey, and as Nick Saban explained to Congress, they're saying, how much am I going to get? Not how am I going to develop it? Can you get me into the league? It's how much am I going to get? And so we've skewed things from a college. Should they get a little money? Okay, the nil thing. But I'm watching an LSU player last night doing a tax ad, FloJo, whatever her name is. She can't pronounce the word boost. I get an Experian boost. Please learn how to say boost. It's got a T on the end.
Well,
so I have a real problem with people doing TV commercials, and they're it's you're not ready for it. You're not.
Well,
ready
and that's and that's some of it.
Commercial.
But and I'm a mercantilist. If you're the Experian ad agency, you take the chances you get for the click-throughs and everything.
Somebody's got to teach. Come on, Joe.
I understand. I'm down with you, player, on that. But here's the most important question, and I mean this sincerely.
Oh, I love this. I love it. Your most important question.
If President Biden forgives everyone's student loan debt, what does that do to college scholarships?
Wow, good question. Wow, you've opened up.
Drag you into my mad little world.
If Joe Biden, I'm going to think about that all day. I'm going to be probably making phone calls. If Joe Biden forgives all student debt,
think about
what
it.
happens to school? Wow, what happens to scholarships? Well, I'm going to say from the sports standpoint, scholarships and the transfer and all that is being kind of regulated right now.
Well,
I gotta analyze that.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's your homework assignment, Mr. Teacher.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a great question. I just think a lot of times the athletic department is kind of separate because they're dealing with their scholarships, paying, but they're handling them anyway through a private entity like Virginia Student Aid Foundation, which recruits the money to pay the athletes. That's why they're there. That's why they've been there forever and ever and ever and ever. And their nut that they have to cut has changed a lot over the last 20 years. I could go back and look at what they used to raise in 1980 and what they raise now, and it's just it's a difference of night and day.
Well,
that's a great point.
It's all about money, Mac. It's all about money now. Apparently, somebody else's money.
Student debt versus scholarship. Wow. I was having a cup of coffee. I was ready to tell you about the first back-to-back in 17 years. Little simple things with UConn, and you're throwing me student debt. That's a great question. But that's you. That's you.
He is the program director at Full Sail University's Dan Patrick School of Broadcasting. He is the great Mac McDonald, our sports director. You have a great morning, sir.
I will. Always good to see you, and we'll talk tomorrow morning.
Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joe Thomas in the morning. Oh, I like the way that fades over the. By the way, that cartoon, that drawing, that artwork was artificial intelligence drawn. I'm not quite sure. Dear old friend of mine, John Biscardi, had AI create that drawing, that painting, and the original, the ponytail. I look like a ninja with the ponytail coming out of the top of my head. But maybe that's what AI, you get, in China, the ponytails come out from up here. But appreciate John putting that together for us. We've got folks calling in at 434-882-4217. We're going to talk about Thomas Jefferson's birthday a little bit. And by the way, here's how this works. Because we can't take live phone calls right now. We're doing the Rick Edelman thing where we ask you to just leave a voicemail when you call. I think I don't judge me on this, but I think I recorded an outgoing message that speaks to that as well there. And maybe that's a couple of banks didn't leave a voice message because the outgoing message says something about, we'll put your comments on the air shortly. That might be why the banks didn't leave that. Thinking about it, though, that probably stopped a couple of telemarketers as well. You can also send your emails to the address above here as well. Let's see if we have a couple of here. Let's see if we can't open this. There it is. That's the one I want to play here. And let's see what we've got here on the call-in lines so far. Let's where did it go? Huh. Okay, that's supposed to open with that player, right? Okay, it's not letting me play it. Maybe we just need to do this and then open it the old-fashioned way.
Hey, Joe, Clark, great show on the Affordable Care Act. Could nonprofit hospitals, pharma, and healthcare insurance providers have profited more if they had written the legislation themselves? That makes me wonder who did write it. Maybe they should have called it Act Like Care is Affordable. I don't know. Now, on the romper room reference, people I'm working with heard that. I then had to explain romper room and the magic mirror. Am I that old, Joe?
Yes.
You keep doing what you do. I'm enjoying it.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. There. Sorry for it. Apparently, the player we used yesterday decided it didn't want to work this morning. The Romper Room was one of those kids shows, and I can you imagine? I mean, I get this about some of the Caillou and some of the stuff that is out there now on television for kids programming, but it was Romper Room, and obviously. Captain Kangaroo, then forget there was another one that had a famous game show host. It was like Bob McAllister or something like that. Did a kid show. It was a little bit like more tweens oriented, but if you wonder where our generation got addicted to television, see the existence of things like Facebook Live and YouTube. It's taken that joke from the movie Back to the Future. No wonder your president has to be an actor. He has to look good on television. The prevalence of cameras everywhere is another one of those moments, just as a complete abstract, that I think we have an amazing opportunity. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but it might have been during that really awkward period where the internet had gone down and YouTube said, see ya. So I'm going to bring it back here. The Charlottesville police chief wants to increase surveillance cameras in the city of Charlottesville, as do many police chiefs. And I remember debating this with a previous Charlottesville police chief, and I said, as long as, and again, these are things, Madison and George Mason were just so brilliant when they wrote the Bill of Rights to not say documents written on parchment. They said your papers, your personal effects, these are the things that are private. That they didn't write that you can't search somebody's house. They said here's the steps that you have to go through in order to be able to search somebody's house. So think about cameras. Cameras are going to exist. They're everywhere. I've got high definition cameras. I've got low definition cameras in my possession. Even some of these things, your iPhones and things like that have higher definition cameras than we have here in the studio. And so you have these opportunities. Maryland has a law in the books that says your cell phones have to be off in the area of a police activity. You say, that's a pretty strange law. And it was passed under the public safety measures, because if you have your cell phone and there's a police activity and there might be an accident on the side of the road or anything other plausibly deniable things that they suggested were the reason for having that rule in place. But the main reason was, if your cell phone is off, your cell phone isn't a camera, which means your cell phone isn't recording whatever's going on. Now, here's the thing. It's not that cameras don't exist. It's not that first-hand eyewitness testimony doesn't exist. What is its admissibility? And I always state this because you forget that our system is supposed to be weighted to the innocence of the accused. You may have heard at some point in your life, innocent until proven guilty. We've flipped that on its head quite a bit. And conservatives can be guilty of this too. We like to laud our prosecutors for their great conviction rates and things like that. But in a world full of cameras, understand, whether it's a political candidate walking into a store just to find the storefront owner holding their camera up saying, "Oh, what are you doing here, sir?" Whether live streaming it or recording it for later distribution. It's edit points. These are the things as a consumer of popular media. Look for edit points, and we have to always be that person to say, okay, well, here's a video that shows something happening. What happened in the 5 minutes before that video? Can I see the raw footage? And if you're sitting on a jury and somebody's got security footage from a corner, well, what's the admissibility of that in court? And at what point does a defense attorney have to say, Your Honor, that was just one video that started, by the way, when my client walked up to the corner where he was standing next to the mobster that you guys were all looking for. And then you have to go and say, hey, can we see the footage before this came along? Because the technology is the technology. Do many folks like to blame the tech? Oh, it's the camera's fault. It's not the camera's fault. It's not, and this is where people get mad at me. It's not, oh, geez, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's like the solar eclipse. I'm looking into this flashlight. It's not the technology's fault. It's not your cell phone's fault. I confess. How do I shut this? Oh, there you go. I didn't realize I had that feature, shake to bake. It's not the technology's fault. It's the person, as I just bore proof to. It's the person wielding the technology. Because if you believe, and this is the hard part of this, if you believe that it's not the firearm, it's the person who's holding the firearm, well, then the same is true about a smartphone. So shooting a video of somebody is not a crime. How you might use it to defame somebody out of context or within edited context is very much a crime, and always has been. And that's where we're losing, and I will circle this back around to President Trump and his statements on abortion. Do we have the clips of President Trump on the abortion issue? Because this was something that has inflamed a lot of folks because they want the elected king to do the things they want done. This is the president from yesterday.
Under my leadership, the Republican Party will always support the creation of strong, thriving, and healthy American families. My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
So there's an important point to this, and I made this before the Supreme Court decided the Dobbs case. Because I asked some of my friends, who, believe it or not, do exist, my friends on the left, and say, are you ready? Not my friends on the left, my friends on the right. I said, are you ready to give up medical freedom for abortion laws? They said, what do you mean? I said, the premise of Roe v. Wade was that the government had no reasonable access to the information that was exchanged between you and your doctor. And there have been many attempts to get around, well, the abortionist isn't really your doctor. But the HIPAA laws and things like that still exist regarding what can be known regarding your health interaction. And this is why the left was able to kind of quietly accept. A lot of people think that the left was quietly able to accept the Dobbs decision in the access to abortion because they had a feeling it would help them win all these states. There's a craven view that says that. But more importantly, I think they were pleased to get rid of this bulwark of medical privacy. And I say that meaning that they were willing to sacrifice the issue of abortion on the altar of the issue of medical privacy. Because that's what is the number one lingering infection of COVID-19. That the government can assign you a vaccine card or any other sort of medical paperwork that can then determine where you're allowed to go, who you're allowed to see, and that kind of stuff.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
An astronomical day at Indy. That story next.
She can STEM, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Or clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM.
The home of the greatest spectacle in racing played host to the greatest spectacle in astronomy Monday. More than 50,000 people showed up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, put on eclipse spectacles, and watched the total eclipse. The day included educational programs, exhibits, and demonstrations, and every visitor was given a pair of the greatest spectacles, see what they did there, to watch the eclipse. There was also an autograph session with IndyCar drivers and a presentation by the Sons of Purdue graduate Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. Speedway says 75% of the eclipse watchers had never been to the Speedway for a race. The entire time of totality lasted less than 6 laps of the Indy 500.
Here's your forecast from Tommy Stafford at Blue Ridge Life magazine. Partly cloudy, isolated showers today. Highs will be in the upper 70s. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers on Wednesday. Highs will be in the mid 70s. Rain likely Thursday. Thunderstorms possible. Highs in the low 70s. Cloudy skies Friday with isolated morning showers. Highs upper 60s. Then sunny skies back for the weekend. Highs near 70 both days. Joe Thomas, thank you for letting us be of visit with you via the YouTubes. What did Congressman say that the internet were all these tubes that interconnected our houses? I think he was remembering those pneumatic tubes that used to be in the department stores, so you could get a credit check up in accounting faster than that. And again, we are here doing this so that we have some time together, and I can get it out of my system so that I don't drive my wife crazy. Because after a week of me not having any broadcast time, she's like, you've been good. So we are still working on the unauthorized autobiography. Thanks to the crowdsourcing that we did some work online and some great chapter titles that I had forgotten. If you go to the Facebook page, Seville Joe Thomas, you will find information about the book and some of the chapter titles. And actually in one of them, because I didn't have a working title for it, and somebody suggested the song that I so frequently use on the program, which is I Want to Be Your Joe. I remember interviewing Billy Ray Cyrus when his album I Want to Be Your Joe came out, and everyone wanted me to interview him because he had a song on the album called I Want My Mullet Back. Can't imagine why people thought that'd be funny for Joe to interview him. But while I was going through the CD after it had arrived in my care, I heard this song, I Want to Be Your Joe. I said, oh my gosh. So at the end of the interview, I said, Billy, can I ask you one last question? And he had that feeling like, oh, it's going to be about Hannah, isn't it? And I said, can I use I Want to Be Your Joe as theme music? And he said, well, sure, man, absolutely. So I actually have Billy Ray Cyrus authorizing me to use I Want to Be Your Joe as a bumper music. But somebody asked me that yesterday, why and would we be doing our normal radio broadcast, which is, for those who listened, referred to as Ted's Day. YouTube and a lot of these online places, they are... I could yell ivermectin in a crowded theater and not get knocked off YouTube faster than I would be if I used copyrighted music. And I have this on, again, a very good authority, dear friend of my wife and me, which is neat because my wife used to go see their band in the 80s play in all the nightclubs of her neighborhood. But now he is a friend of ours, and he's working on a new album now. His name is Randy Jackson, and he used to, well, still does, front for a rock band called Zebra. And during COVID, during the lockdowns, he was, as I was last week, frustrated with not being able to do what it is we do. So he took to Facebook Live and just put a acoustic guitar in his hand and just started playing songs. And his songs, zebra songs and things like that. And YouTube shut him down. Said, oh, no, you're playing copyrighted music over YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook. And he, bless his heart, he had somebody he could get to. When YouTube does that to you, good luck finding somebody to appeal your case to. But he was able to get to somebody in the directorate and said, these are all the copyrights. These are my songs. I wrote them. I'm the guy on the copyright. And eventually they acquiesced and allowed him to. But man, these online platforms are brutal when it comes to copyrighted music. So things like I Want to Be Your Joe and Ted's D and that kind of stuff, working to music, I have to put aside until we have the more safe realm of fair use and broadcast medium. A couple other things I wanted to get into. Albemarle County Schools here in our flag city have changed the name of another of their schools. Agner Hurt Elementary School is no longer going to be Agner Hurt Elementary School, because yet again they found somebody who didn't do anything wrong, but didn't do enough right. This is the new paradigm. So starting on July 1st of this year, Agner Hurt Elementary School will be named Agner Elementary. The school name review final report says that Benjamin Franklin Hurt, and I mean, my God, isn't there a Benjamin Franklin movie out there? I mean, where's the hue and cry? His name is Benjamin Franklin Hurt. He was an administrator for Albemarle County Public Schools, had associations or oversights of public remarks or images on the record that are no longer reflective of Albemarle County Public Schools' values and policies. There were no such findings in connection with former County Executive Guy Agner, whose name will remain on the board. But think about that phrase for a second. Let that rattle around in your cancel culture hashtag woke America that we're in now. This guy has been erased from history. Winston Smith has sat there scratching him out of history. Benjamin Franklin Hurt, for being associated with public remarks or images, or had oversight over public images that are not reflective of the Albemarle County Public School values and property. Not that he did them, not that he said them, not that he held those beliefs, but that he was in some way, shape, or form associated with them. That you didn't do enough about it. He's the second, I think, and again, you call me at 434-882-4217, and you tell me. But I think he's the second. He may be the third person who has fallen under this jackboot new, if you existed during the time something bad happened. One of the other school names were changed because the school principal that they were named after was in charge of the school during the civil rights era, during the massive resistance where Virginia's Democratic Party closed the schools down lest they let black kids in with white kids. And that this administrator was in office during that period of time and didn't do enough. So what is the life lesson we're teaching our children? We're told that we're not supposed to argue against things like No Child Left Behind or the Affordable Care Act. Oh, those things, no. Affordable Care Act, you can't argue against health care for people. Don't question Medicare or Medicaid. We're not supposed to question Common Core and the dumbing down of the standards. We're not supposed to question all those things. But then, how will history judge us if we do nothing when something horrific is going on? Because obviously the lesson of Benjamin Franklin Hurt is that if you don't do enough when you see something horrific going on, well, we'll get rid of you. We'll erase you from history. Go find me all those Joe Thomas in the Morning audio recordings. We're going to erase those. Get me my degauser. We're going to zap them. He's never going to be thought of again. Because that's the message, isn't it? Isn't that what happened to Mr. Hurt? Is that he had not done enough to fight back against whatever, the images. They don't go into grave detail on it. Obviously, the presentations to the school board were of such that they decided in their naming committee that they would remove Benjamin Franklin Hurt from Albemarle County schools because he didn't do enough. So what things in your life, when you see these horrific things going on, are you not doing enough of? And would your name grace an elementary school at some point and have somebody say, back in that era when they were killing babies left and right, more black babies were being killed than, remember that euthanasia era? Joe Thomas, the name on the Joe Thomas School of Broadcasting, he didn't do enough. So let's take his name off that school. Even if you endowed the school yourself, you run the risk if you don't do enough when something horrific is being done. I guess the secret is determining what is horrific before that happens. Anyway, we'll try to catch up with Steve from First Free Coffee tomorrow morning and chat a little bit about the special event that's starting Saturday at 5. Saturday is Thomas Jefferson's birthday, and here's another one of these guys, perhaps the Lord High Mugwump of all the people who have had their names besmirched and their characters assailed because of things that they didn't do enough of. I used to have it better committed to memory, and I don't have it written down here, the lost usurpation. He has waged cruel war against humanity itself in the persons of peoples transported hither from their home to here. Yeah, it's this wonderful treatise against slavery. And say what you will about Thomas Jefferson, whose birthday is coming up on Saturday, and we will celebrate it, and I will have this passage committed to memory. He hated slavery. He might not have been a very good arm twister. His problem may have been that his association with that other Benjamin Franklin fella and John Adams in creating our legal filing known as the Declaration of Independence might have done him dirty when it came to the politics of getting enough people to vote for his Declaration of Independence and taking that out. But think of the different place we'd be. I mean, never mind we mentioned Convention of States is holding the party for Thomas Jefferson. And I've said, imagine where we would be if even just one of those Convention of States attempts prior to the Civil War had been successful. Think about that for a second. Tens of thousands of Americans, brothers killing brothers, cousins, could have been avoided with the Convention of States. But even more so, what if Jefferson had been a better arm twister, had been a better deal maker to get that passage into the Declaration of Independence? It's the longest one out there. You can see it. It's in the National Archives. This isn't a conspiracy theory. But Saturday, starting at 5, at First Free Coffee Bar in the Hollymead Town Center. We will see you there. But until tomorrow, so long, and thanks for all the fish.